Good evening. This is the Northern Sun Experience. We're about 1 month away from the start of the conference tournament in Sioux Falls, and NSIC teams are starting to figure out their identities. We'll review the weekend that was with my teams of the week, and we're going to start on the women's side with a bit of an unconventional pick. My team of the week is Sioux Falls, who went 1-1 on the weekend, but hung tough against the top two teams in the North Division. The Cougars lost to MSU Moorhead by just 1 point on Friday night, but then came back the next night with a big road win at Northern State, scoring 82 points. It's the most points the Wolves have given up since 2013. And all of this also comes on the heels of the controversial ending against Winona State, so USF is my women's team of the week. And while it may be an easy pick, my men's team of the week has to be Augustana. 12 straight wins to start conference play, all of them by double digits, and 15 straight wins overall. Another big performance this weekend with a blowout of St. Cloud State and a solid effort against Minnesota Duluth. The Vikings are my men's team of the week. And when we come back, we'll bring in another Viking, former Augustana point guard Jordan Dalton, to break down the weekend that was in men's hoops.
The Northern Sun Experience on Midco Sports Network is presented by Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine and Dakota Land Honda.
And welcome back to the Northern Sun Experience. Once again, joined by former Augustana point guard Jordan Dalton to break down NSIC basketball. Jordan, we're going to start with the men's side. Once again, your alma mater just continues to dominate. Another couple of victories this weekend. 39-point win over St. Cloud State, 29-point win over Minnesota Duluth. 15 straight wins overall, 12 straight conference wins by double digits, yada, yada, yada. Right. I'm not trying to be a devil's advocate, but is there any way they can keep this pace up for the rest of the season?
Well, I think for the Vikings, they, as a group, understand it's a process. They just want to continue to get better and better each week, week in and week out. And they go game by game, and they're just trying to get better as a team. And so I think for them, the biggest thing to understand is they've had close games. You know, I mean, the Duluth game on Saturday, halftime, it's a 7-point game. But then they go, Augustana goes on a 15-6 run. Pushes the lead to 18, is never really a game after that. And so we kind of talked about it. They don't have a lot of lulls in scoring each and every game they play. You know, you get a team that maybe goes on a lull for 2 or 3 minutes and they don't get a bucket or they take some tough shots and they don't fall. Augie doesn't have that because they have so many scoring options. And then this weekend, if you look, I was very impressed by Jordan Spencer. He had one of the best weekends I've seen out of a point guard in the NSIC in a really long time. Both games goes for 11 assists and only 2 turnovers. And when you have a guy like that plays with so much poise and is always under control, that's tough to defend, and it makes the game so much easier for his teammates. So they're really on a great roll right now, but I think for them, once again, the goals are bigger. The goals are bigger than each conference game, but they understand that it's a process to get to where they want to be at.
Jordan Spencer in the top 5 in the NSIC in assist-to-turnover ratio, leads the NSIC in assists, and of course Dan Jansen, who we didn't even mention, wins second straight NSIC South Division Player of the Week, so they are just rolling. And 88 points in at least all 12 of their conference games. That's amazing.
Yeah, and we talked about it a little bit before that what's tough is they put 5 scoring options out there no matter what their lineup is. You know, 1 through 7 for them can consistently knock down outside jump shots or get the ball in the paint, whether it's off of post touches or off of penetration. So it's really one of those things as a defense, kind of pick your poison. What are you going to try to take away? Like I said, if you double team Jansen and Schilling down low, well, don't worry about it. We got 3-point shooters lining the arcs. If you try to take away the 3-point shot, well, don't worry about that. Well, you got an All-American, 2 All-Americans really down low that can go off on the post at any point in time. So it's really, really difficult to pick something to take away from Augustana because they do have so many weapons.
Augie on the road this week at Winona State and Upper Iowa. Well, Minnesota State Moorhead is rebounding nicely after they lost to UMary last week. 2 big home wins over Sioux Falls and SMSU. In a weird way, could the loss to UMary actually help the Dragons down the road?
Yeah, I think any loss is a learning opportunity as long as the team can respond the right way. You know, give you an opportunity to see kind of where some of your weaknesses are. And I think the Dragons have done a great job of that. Obviously, which is evident, they're on a 3-game winning streak and won all 3 games by by 8 points or more. And I think they've really just gotten back to playing great, unselfish team basketball. You know, over this 3-game stretch, they've shot the ball better than 55% from the field, and they're averaging over 17 assists per game. And so it's one of those things that, like you said, a loss kind of wakes you up. It brings you back down to reality and understand, all right, who are we as a team? And right now the Dragons they're still one of the best teams in the country. Everybody's going to stub their foot every once in a while. But they're a great unselfish team. They're a very skilled team. And you got Sievely down low, who's one of the best post players in the country. And so just because they didn't let that one loss define their entire season. And that's what you see from championship caliber teams is, hey, yep, we lost, whatever, we're going to move on to the next game. They don't let that define their season.
Minnesota State Moorhead 19-2 overall. Well, speaking of the University of Mary, since that upset win over MSU Moorhead, the Marauders have actually lost 3 games in a row, and that includes 2 losses this weekend at home to Winona State and Upper Iowa. So did you, Mary, maybe get a little too high after the MSU Moorhead victory? Why have they lost 3 straight?
Yeah, I think it's tough when a team, like, as we mentioned, for the past 2 seasons just hasn't had that much success. When they beat a top 5 team in the country, kind of feel like they're on top of the world. You get a lot of people telling you how good you are, and maybe
like
kind of
you and I.
there you go, and maybe kind of forget what got them to that point. I think that's just what's been tough for the Marauders. They've kind of lost their team identity. We talked about it earlier, in the season. Their team identity is attacking. They're a great attacking team where there's off the penetration, off post touches. They play hard. They play together. Well, over this last three-game losing streak, they haven't attempted more than 15 free throws in any game, and they're also shooting below 30% from the three-point line. So I think it's one of those things that they just fell in love with the three-point shot, not really getting great shots on the offensive end, and that's matriculating over to the other end, and they're just not playing as hard on the defensive end. And so they're going to really have to regroup and reevaluate, hey, do we want that win against Moorhead to be at the top of our season, or do we want to actually compete come postseason play? And like I said, they just got to get back to who they are as a team, attacking, aggressive in nature, getting to the free throw line, getting easy shots, and more importantly, just playing hard on the defensive end.
Well, they'll have plenty of time to focus because their next 2 weekends, the next 4 games are all on the road. Well, besides Augustane's 15-game winning streak, the next longest winning streak is Northern State with 4. How have the Wolves been able to turn it around lately?
Yeah, well, you got to give a lot of credit to Darren Paterka, obviously NSIC North Player of the Week. This past weekend averaged 18 points a game, 6.5 rebounds, 4.5 assists. A guy who can really play multiple positions and do it all. And he embodies, in my mind, the team that Northern State is, excuse me. They're a great, versatile team. They got guys who can play the 2, 3, or the 4 spot. They can switch on the defensive end because they're all similar in size and athleticism. And so I think that versatility has really translated into a lot of easy game planning for the coaching staff. Like I said, you got guys who can guard multiple positions. You got guys who can play multiple positions in the offensive end. And that just really opens the book up to what you can do on both ends of the court. I just love their intensity that they play with. Ever since Coach Don Meyer's been there, they've been known for playing hard each and every single game. And, his legacy continues on through his players now. And just the effort and intensity that they have is really fun to watch, and why they're on a 4-game winning streak right now.
And their next 4, like you, Mary, are also on the road. Well, besides the teams that we mentioned, what's one team you're keeping an eye on this weekend?
Yeah, I'd love to see how Minnesota State Mankato bounces back. They had a tough weekend this past weekend, and right now it's a weird week where they have 3 games this week. They play Tuesday night, and all 3 games are on the road. And so we always talk about athletes are creatures of habit. And so it'll be interesting to see how they're able to kind of combat this unusual schedule and see if they can get 3 wins this weekend.
All right, thank you very much, Jordan. When we come back, Mr. Dalton's going to break down the weekend that was in NSIC women's hoops.
The Northern Sun Experience on Midco Sports Network is presented by Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine and Dakota Land Honda.
And welcome back to the Northern Sun Experience. Once again, joined by former Augustana point guard Jordan Dalton. Jordan, we're going to talk women's hoops now. Sioux Falls went 1-1 this weekend, but they lost a close 1-point game to MSU Moorhead, who's leading the North Division. But to me, more impressively, they won at Northern State, scoring 82 points. That's the most points the Wolves have given up in 2.5 years. How are they able to attack that vaunted Wolves defense?
Well, we talk about it all the time. The Cougars are just so deadly from the outside. They were plus 45 from the three-point line in that game. And what makes them so difficult is they have so many offensive weapons that can knock down the 3-ball. They connected on 16 3-point field goals in that game against Northern State, and really just busted that game open in the third quarter. Went on and opened up the second half on a 19-1 run. And when you have runs like that, we talk about it all the time. Northern State, they're not built to come back, from large deficits. And so I thought the Cougars did a great job of just controlling the tempo, speeding the game up a little bit. They created so many more offensive possessions as well. Forced 11 turnovers and also got 11 offensive boards. And so they're getting multiple attempts at the basket, but once again, they're deadly from the outside, and that's their game. They're going to run, they're going to push, they're going to play up-tempo, and I thought they were able to impose their will against Northern State.
You mentioned how Northern State really isn't built to come back in games like that, but of course, the reason they win all the time is they dictate that pace. They dictate sort of that half-court tempo. So does it take a hot shooting team like USF to get Northern State out of that game plan?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of that. Like you said, when you're knocking down three-pointers, you're playing with a lot of confidence and a little bit more energy. But we talked about it. When you give up 11 offensive rebounds and you also turn the ball over 11 times if you're Northern State, well, you're playing in a limited possession game anyway. And so when you have that many opportunities that you just don't get a look at the basket, it's going to be pretty tough to compete with. And then once again, you can't go on these 4 or 5 minute lulls where you don't get a bucket, and especially against a high-scoring team like the University of Sioux Falls. You're going to shoot yourself in the foot every single time, and so that's why you got to commend the Cougars of imposing their will and speeding the game up as much as possible, getting deflections on the offense or on the defensive end, crashing the offensive boards, and then like I said, when the ball's going through the net, you see one person makes it. It's kind of infectious for the rest of the team.
Well, Northern State is tied with Minnesota State Moorhead and Minnesota Crookston at 9-3 at the top of the North Division standings. So among those three teams, which one to you is playing the best right now?
I love Minnesota State Moorhead. They're doing it, number one, on the defensive end. Right now they're on a 4-game winning streak, and all 4 games they've held opponents under 60 points. And that's hard to do in this league that we talked about. Not only that, they've won 3 of the 4 games by double figures. And so they're a team that's really, really competing on the defensive end. We always talk about it. Great championship level teams have championship level defenses. That's what's going to get you through every single time. And I just think Minnesota State Moorhead has been the most consistent on that end of the floor. And they also do a great job of closing every possession out with a defensive rebound. It's once again very simple concept. But every time they're only giving up 9 offensive boards. So every offensive possession that their opponents have, they have to make it count. And when you get those solid defensive rebounds, limit teams to one shot, you're able to get into a better flow on the offensive end. So I just think they've done a great job playing both ends of the court.
As you said, simple concept, but they're the ones who are executing it to the best.
There you go.
Well, Winona State lost a close game to the University of Mary Friday. They rebounded with a big win against Minot State Saturday. Warriors are 10-2. They have the best overall record within the NSIC. Even with the Friday loss, are they playing the best right now in the conference, or are some of those 9-3 teams maybe playing a little bit better?
Well, I think they've been the most consistent in the conference all year long. They're number one in scoring, averaging 76 points a game, and number one in defense, defensive team as well, only giving up 54 points a game. And so I think from start to finish, if you look at the conference season as a whole, they've been the most consistent. I just thought against Mary, they didn't have that intensity that they normally have on the defensive end. They gave up 15 offensive boards to Mary, and the University of Mary converted that into 21 second chance points. And so when you give teams multiple looks at the basket, it's going to come back to bite you. And we talk about it all the time. Great teams don't shoot themselves in the foot. They don't beat themselves. And I thought that for whatever reason, the Warriors just didn't have that intensity. But it's great to see them bounce back on Saturday, get a win, kind of get back to their winning ways. And,
of course, things are tightening up, not to belabor the point of last week's controversial ending, but had the result been different, Sioux Falls would have been 9-3, Winona State would have been 9-3, tied with those other teams. So there would have been 5 9-3 teams, just to give you an idea of how tight the conference is. Well, you mentioned Winona State's loss to Mary. The Marauder men are struggling, but the women have won 3 of their last 5 games. They're only 4-8 in conference play, but 6 of those 8 losses have been by 7 points or less. Can this team maybe get over the hump and make a run late in the season?
Well, I think if they're going to make a run, it's going to be in these next 2 weeks. In my opinion, these next 2 weeks are the biggest 2 weeks in their entire season. They got 4 road games in the next 2 weeks, and 3 of those are against teams with an 8-4 conference record. And so it's one of those things that if you're going to make a run, if you're going to prove to yourself you can play with some of those top-tier teams, this is going to be the time to do it. You think about it, they sweep those 2 weekends, they're 8-8, sitting at a conference record of 500, right in the thick of things. But if they're going to do that, they have to stick to what got them to this point, which is their defensive effort. Right now they're holding teams under 35% shooting from the field, and so they just make life miserable on the offensive end for their opponents, and they're going to have to stick to their guns. I think in order to kind of get over that hump. They got to figure out how do we translate or transition this great defensive effort to easier buckets on the offensive end. But once again, next 2 weeks should show it.
What teams should we keep an eye on this weekend besides the teams that we just mentioned?
Well, I'm looking forward to Northern State. They had a tough weekend here this past weekend, but they got 2 big games on the road at Bemidji on Friday, and then a huge game against Minnesota State Crookston on Saturday. And so I want to see if the Wolves are able to kind of control tempo and kind of impose their will against Crookston, who's very similar to USF in the fact that they get up and down, they shoot a lot of three-pointers. So if the Northern State Wolves can defend the three-point line and control the tempo, maybe make it a low possession game, I think they'll have the edge there.
As a former player, this time of the year, sort of that right in between January and February time, you're right before conference tournament season, middle of the actual conference season. Is this the time where you sort of start to figure out your identity a little bit? Yeah, you should. If you haven't at this point, you're struggling. And these top-tier teams, what they're doing, number one, the people who are going to be the most successful are the teams that are going to be healthy. And that's something that you just can't control. And luckily, for the most part, something most teams haven't had to deal with. And so the teams who are healthy and the teams who kind of have that end goal in mind of, hey, I just want to get better week in and week out. But these are definitely the dog days of the season. It's negative temperatures in most parts of the Midwest here, and so it's cold and getting dark earlier. So all those things kind of play into the fact that these are some of the tougher times in the season, but right now you're starting to see who the top-tier teams are and seeing if they can have that consistent effort. All right, thank you very much, Jordan Dalton. Well, coming up next, we're going to go under the Northern Sun at Bemidji State University.
The Northern Sun Experience on Midco Sports Network is presented by Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine and Dakota Land Honda.
And welcome back to the Northern Sun Experience. It's time to shine the spotlight on one of our member schools with a feature we like to call Under the Northern Sun. Tonight, it's Bemidji State University.
Okay. I felt so comfortable when I came here. I had the most welcoming feeling from everyone. With the homecoming football games, everybody jumps in the lake afterwards if we win those, so that's been a really strong tradition I always like to take part of.
The campus is one of a kind. Being able to walk out of a building and see the lake on your right-hand side, walking, having a cup of coffee in your hand, you don't get that in most universities, hardly anywhere in the United States.
Faculty here are really dedicated to your success. My academic advisor really knows me and he makes sure I'm getting things done on time.
We have awesome professors. It's great having only 20 people in every class that I go to. I know every professor on a personal level. They all know me, they all say hi to me in the hallways, which is awesome.
Faculty at BSU has been very easy for me to approach and talk to.
He cares about what he's teaching, not just about the students, but he cares about the content in which he's teaching.
The BSU professors really brought their perspective into the classroom, and that really helps with your learning experience.
Got to travel, see the world, and I came back. That really opened my eyes, and I can now go up to people and ask, where are you from? Oh, that's great, I've been there, it was so amazing, and kind of have that relationship with people now.
Visiting Norway changed me because now I know there are many more Indigenous people going through things that we have gone through here. It's not just us going through these problems in our own bubble, it's worldwide.
I recommend living on campus. It is just a blast.
The convenience factor of the dorms is ridiculous. I mean, I'm not paying to, put gas in my tank every morning. I don't have to start my car when it's freezing.
Everyone's really close. All the athletes, all the students, all the professors, and you can really feel the community aspect, which makes it feel even more like home.
Am I glad I chose BSU?
Without a doubt.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I couldn't imagine myself anywhere else.
Choosing BSU was the best.
Choosing BSU was the best decision ever.
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 When we come back, it's DB's Picks, my top 5 plays of the past week in the NSIC.
The Northern Sun Experience on Midco Sports Network is presented by Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine and Dakota Land Honda.
Welcome back. It's time for DB's Picks, my top 5 plays of the past week in the NSIC. At number 5, this Golden Eagle glides right past a Golden Bear. Katrina Nordic posts up, then goes up and under for the lay-in. The NSIC's preseason player of the year in the North Division has Minnesota Crookston heading north in the standings, thanks to play number 5. For number 4, we go to Moorhead, where the Dragons' top 2 scorers team up for a nice dish. Tanner Kretschmann finds Isaac Sievely down low for 2 off the pick and roll. Here it is again, Kretschmann stays patient as Sievely finds some space down low for the easy bucket. The Dragons are flying high once again with a 3-game winning streak, thanks to play number 4. At number 3, we stay in Moorhead, only this time we honor the opponent, Southwest Minnesota State. Drew Osmundson's shot is partially blocked as he goes up, but he corrals the loose ball and finds a streaking Joey Bartlett for the throwdown. Osmundson takes advantage of a small space in traffic, and with all the Dragons converging around him, Bartlett is clear for liftoff. The Mustangs may not have won the game, but they're soaring through the skies at play number 3. For number 2, it's another great play from Osmundson. Once again, the Mustang Jr. finds himself in trouble, but bounces it between 3 Dragon defenders to Mitch Wegg. Let's slow this one down. Osmundson knows the converging defense gives him only one option, and he threads the needle perfectly to his teammate for a layup and for play number 2 of the past week. But our number 1 play gave Minnesota Crookston a 1-point win. Down 90-89 with less than a second on the clock, Allison Hughes finds Isioma Odor wide open for the layup at the buzzer to beat Minnesota State. Check it out in slow motion. You can see that the Maverick defense keys on Golden Eagles sharpshooter Alexa Thielman near the 3-point line, and no one picks up Odor as she glides to the hoop untouched. That gave the Golden Eagles a last-second come-from-behind victory over Minnesota State, as well as the number 1 play of the past week. Once again, a thank you to all of our NSIC member schools for their time, video, and contributions for this week's show. We'll be back next week right here for another Northern Sun Experience.